okay.
fearless,
Let it out.
her
I
dark
can't
hair
do this
catching the light
anymore.
of a
We're
birthday
here for
candle
you.
she'd never blow out. 7 years old. Forever 7 years old. Grant set the picture down on the scarred wooden table of the Rigthorn Riders Clubhouse, his fingers lingering on the glass as if he could somehow reach through time and pull her back. The afternoon sun cut through the dusty windows, illuminating the empty beer bottles and motorcycle magazines scattered across the room. Outside, the Arizona desert stretched endlessly, a landscape as barren as the hole in his chest. 58 years old, and Grant Maddox had learned that some wounds don't heal. They just become part of who you are, settling into your bones like old shrapnel. The scars on his knuckles told one story. The lines around his eyes told another. But the invisible scar, the one that wrapped around his heart like barbed wire, that one told the truth he'd been running from for over a decade. He'd been a different man in 2009. Special Agent Grant Maddox, rising star in the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit. Sharp suit, sharper instincts, and a solve rate that made his superiors nod with approval. He'd thought he was invincible then. Thought he could catch every monster, save every child, and still make it home for dinner. He'd been catastrophically wrong. The memory came anyway, uninvited and unwelcome, as it did every day around this time. The afternoon light was the same. That's what always triggered it, that particular slant of sun that meant the day was dying, but wasn't quite dead yet. May 14th, 2009. A Thursday. Lily had a piano recital at 6. She'd been practicing for weeks, her small fingers stumbling over Beethoven's Für Elise, until she could play it without mistakes. She'd made him promise 3 times that he'd be there. 3 times he'd looked into those trusting eyes and said, "Yes, sweetheart, I'll be there." He hadn't been there. A case had broken that afternoon. Vincent Hale, a name Grant had been chasing for 6 months, had finally surfaced. 3 children missing in 3 months, and Grant had him. He had him right there, solid evidence linking Hale to a warehouse on the outskirts of Phoenix. The warrant was being signed. The team was mobilizing. Just 1 more hour, he'd told himself. 1 more hour and we nail this bastard and all those kids come home. 1 more hour became 2, became 3, became the phone call that shattered his world. His wife Diane's voice stretched thin with panic. "Grant, where are you? Lily's not home. The recital ended 40 minutes ago and she's not home." He'd felt the first cold finger of dread then, but pushed it away. Lily was responsible. Lily was careful. She probably went to a friend's house and forgot to call. He told Diane to check with the neighbors. He'd told her not to panic. He'd told her he'd be home soon. He kept working the Hale case. By the time Grant reached home, it had been 4 hours since Lily disappeared. 4 hours that he could never get back. 4 hours that belonged to whatever monster had taken his daughter. The investigation had been swift and brutal. Lily's backpack was found 3 blocks from the school, her sheet music scattered across the sidewalk like fallen leaves. Security footage showed a white van pulling up beside her. The license plates were stolen. The van was found abandoned 2 days later, wiped clean. And Vincent Hale, the man Grant had been so close to catching, suddenly had an airtight alibi. He'd been in the warehouse, yes, but with his lawyer and 3 witnesses who swore he'd been there all afternoon. The evidence, Grant thought, he had crumbled like ash. The warrant was worthless. But Grant knew. He knew with the certainty of a father's rage and a detective's instinct. Hale had taken Lily. Hale or someone working with him. The pattern matched. The timing matched. Everything matched except the evidence. For 2 years, Grant tore himself apart trying to prove it. He investigated on his own time. He followed leads that went nowhere. He pushed his team, pushed his superiors, pushed until they had no choice but to push back. And through it all, his colleague Nathaniel Cross had been there. Helpful, supportive Cross, always ready with a sympathetic ear and a fresh lead to chase, always seeming to work just as hard as Grant to find Lily, always somehow coming up empty. Grant hadn't seen it then. Grief had made him stupid, desperate, blind to the signs that should have been obvious. It was only later, after Diane died from a heart that couldn't bear the weight of loss, after Grant resigned from the FBI, in disgrace after he'd destroyed everything good in his life chasing ghosts, that he started to wonder, started to see the pattern in Cross's helpfulness, the way evidence seemed to vanish, the way leads went cold just when they got warm. But by then it was too late. Cross had been promoted. Vincent Hale had been murdered in prison, stabbed by another inmate before Grant could ever question him properly. And Lily was just another statistic in a file gathering dust. Grant picked up the photograph again, his thumb tracing the curve of his daughter's cheek. He'd failed her in every way a father could fail. And now he lived in this dusty clubhouse with men who'd also failed at being who they thought they were, riding bikes across empty highways, running from demons that had learned to keep pace. The door banged open and Silas Draven filled the frame, all 6'4" and 250 pounds of him. The man had been a Marine once before a rock broke something in him that wouldn't mend right. Now he was Grant's second, the muscle and the loyalty that kept the Rigthorn riders together. "Boss, we're heading out. You coming?" Grant looked at the photograph one more time, then slid it into the pocket of his leather vest right over his heart where it always rode. "Yeah, I'm coming." Outside, 3 more bikes waited. Rowan Vale, lean and quiet, his fingers always dancing over a keyboard or a throttle, never quite still. He'd been a software engineer before corporate politics, and a nasty divorce left him looking for something real. Briar Leon, the youngest at 28, still had something to prove, still believed the world might be fair if you just fought hard enough. They were broken men, all of them, but they were honest about being broken, and that counted for something. Grant swung his leg over his Harley Davidson, felt the familiar weight settle into his bones. The engine roared to life, and for a moment, just a moment, the sound drowned out the voice in his head that whispered failure, failure, failure. They rode out onto Highway 89, 4 bikes in loose formation, the desert sun beating down on leather and chrome. This was Grant's life now, empty miles and empty hours trying to outrun a past that had learned to ride just as fast. He didn't know that 15 years of running was about to end. Didn't know that redemption was sometimes delivered in the most unlikely packages. Didn't know that in less than an hour he'd see a face pressed against glass, a sign held in trembling hands, and a pair of eyes that would drag him back to the day he had lost everything. All he knew was the road, the sun, and the weight of his daughter's photograph against his heart. The afternoon was bright and calm, the kind of day that seemed impossible for anything terrible to happen. The kind of day that lied. 60 miles away in the small town of Dustwood, Arizona, Callie Brennan was learning that bright days could hide monsters. She was 8 years old and smarter than most adults gave her credit for. Her mother, Sarah, worked 2 jobs to keep their small house from being swallowed by bills, which meant Callie had learned early how to take care of herself, how to microwave dinner, how to check that the doors were locked, how to recognize when something wasn't right. That morning, Callie had woken up with a strange feeling like static electricity on her skin. She couldn't explain it, but she'd learned to trust her instincts. Her favorite detective novels always talked about gut feelings, and Callie wanted to be a detective someday. So she paid attention to her gut. Her gut was telling her today was important. She'd gone to the public library after school like she did 3 days a week. The library was Callie's sanctuary, a place where she could disappear into stories of brave detectives solving impossible cases. Mrs. Henderson, the librarian, always saved the new mystery novels for Callie, understanding that this quiet girl with the serious eyes needed these stories in a way most kids needed cartoons. Callie had checked out 2 books and was cutting through Dustwood Park on her way home when she saw them. Two men standing by a bench near the empty playground. One was tall and nervous, constantly looking around. The other was shorter, stockier, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. They weren't doing anything obviously wrong, but something about the way they stood, the way the nervous one kept glancing at a manila envelope, made Callie's detective instinct ping. She slowed her pace, pretending to tie her shoe while she watched. The stocky man pulled out a thick bundle of cash, counted it quickly, then handed it over. The nervous man gave him the envelope, a classic exchange. Callie had read about this in her books. Without thinking, Callie pulled out the old Polaroid camera her mother had given her. It had been her grandmother's, and Sarah couldn't afford a digital camera, so Callie had learned to make the most of the precious film cartridges they could occasionally afford. She had 3 shots left. She used one now, capturing the 2 men mid-transaction. The flash went off. Both men's heads snapped toward her. Callie's heart stopped. In her books, the detective was always clever enough not to get caught. But this wasn't a book, and she wasn't clever enough. The stocky man, Marcus Hale, felt his blood turn to ice when he saw the little girl with the camera. His mind was already calculating. The envelope contained instructions for a delivery, names and locations that could never be photographed. The people he worked for didn't tolerate mistakes. They especially didn't tolerate witnesses. The tall man ran, disappearing into the trees. Marcus watched the girl, saw her eyes widen as she realized what she'd done. She turned to run. Marcus knew he should let her go, should hope she was just a kid playing detective and wouldn't understand what she'd seen, should trust that an 8-year-old girl wasn't a real threat. But Marcus Hale had learned that hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. His brother Vincent had been murdered in prison 5 years ago for knowing too much. Marcus himself had just gotten out of prison 3 months ago, his life in pieces, his debts crushing him. And now Nathaniel Cross, the man who'd controlled Vincent and now controlled Marcus, had given him one final job. Find the USB drive that Rebecca Mills had hidden before she died. The drive that contained enough evidence to destroy Cross's entire operation. The drive that was supposedly with Rebecca's sister, Sarah Brennan. Sarah Brennan, who had a daughter. Marcus hadn't known which daughter until this moment, hadn't known if Sarah even still had the drive. But looking at this little girl with her detective novels and her camera, something clicked in his mind. This was Sarah's daughter. This was the key to everything. And she'd just taken his photograph. The decision made itself. Marcus was already moving, crossing the park with purposeful strides that weren't quite running, weren't quite threatening. Just a man trying to catch up to a little girl who dropped something. Callie ran. Her detective instincts were screaming now, all the warnings her mother had drilled into her lighting up like sirens. Don't talk to strangers. Don't get in cars. If someone scares you, run and scream. She ran toward the street, toward people, toward safety. Marcus was faster. He called out, his voice friendly, concerned. Hey, little girl, I think you dropped this. Callie slowed despite herself looking back. Marcus was holding up a pink hair ribbon. It wasn't hers, but she was 8, and adults usually told the truth, and maybe she had dropped something. That moment of hesitation was all Marcus needed. He closed the distance, got between Callie and the street, and when she tried to dart past him, his hand shot out and grabbed her arm. Not hard, not yet, just firm enough. I'm lost, he lied smoothly. My dog ran off and I can't find him. Can you help me look? He's just over here. Callie tried to pull away. My mom says not to help strangers. Your mom's smart, Marcus said, and there was real regret in his voice. But I really need help. Just for a minute, please. He was already pulling her gently but insistently toward the parking lot where his white van waited. The same van that had once belonged to Vincent. The same van that Grant Maddox had seen in his nightmares for 15 years. Callie tried to scream, but Marcus's hand covered her mouth, and then she was being lifted, carried, and the van's side door was opening, and she was being pushed inside, and the door was slamming shut, and the world narrowed to darkness and terror. The interior of the van smelled like motor oil and old carpet. Callie's hands were being bound with zip ties not tight enough to hurt, but tight enough to hold. Marcus wasn't rough. He almost seemed reluctant, his hands shaking as he worked. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and he sounded like he meant it. "I'm so sorry, kid, but I don't have a choice." Callie's mind was racing through everything she'd read about kidnapping. Stay calm, remember details, look for opportunities to escape, leave clues, signal for help. Her eyes scanned the van's interior. Old fast food wrappers, a spare tire, a coiled rope, and there wedged under the passenger seat, a crumpled flyer advertising a local garage sale. Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, starting the engine. His hands were still shaking. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number. "It's me," he said quietly. "Yeah, I got her. No, not a kid, a girl, about 8. I know that wasn't the plan, but she took a picture of the exchange. She's Sarah Brennan's daughter. Yes, I'm sure. What do you want me to do?" Callie couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she could see Marcus's face in the rearview mirror. He looked sick. "The old safe house, yeah, I remember. And then I understand. No, there won't be any problems. I'll get the bear and..." "What? You're sure she has it? Okay. Okay, I'll call when it's done." He hung up. In the mirror, his eyes found Callie's. "You have a stuffed bear. Your mom maybe gave you one recently." Callie's mind flashed to Mr. Buttons, the worn teddy bear that had belonged to her Aunt Rebecca. The aunt she'd never met because Aunt Rebecca had died in a car accident when Callie was 3. Sarah had given her the bear last year, had been weirdly insistent that Callie keep it safe, never throw it away. Callie didn't answer. Marcus's shoulders sagged. "Doesn't matter. We'll find it." The van pulled out of the parking lot and onto the street. Through the tinted rear windows, Callie could see Dustwood receding, her whole life getting smaller and smaller. She remembered her books. The heroes always found a way. They always left clues. They always fought back even when they were scared. Her eyes fell on the flyer again, then on a dried-out marker rolling on the floor, probably left by some previous owner of the van. Her hands were bound, but she could still move her fingers. With aching slowness, Callie worked the flyer free, then managed to grab the marker. The cap was already off-dried, but not completely useless. She tested it on the paper, felt it drag across the surface, leaving faint marks. Marcus was focused on driving, checking his mirrors constantly. He didn't notice Callie working in the back. She wrote in shaky letters, each word a prayer: kidnapped. Help, Callie Brennan. Then she waited for a stop sign, a traffic light, another car. Waited for any chance to make someone see. The van turned onto Highway 89, heading south toward the empty stretches of desert between Dustwood and the Mexico border. Marcus was sweating despite the air conditioning. His phone rang again. He answered it. "Cross, I'm on my way." "No, she's quiet, scared. About 2 hours. I understand. You're coming yourself." "Yes, sir." Callie filed the name away. Cross. The man giving orders. The man Marcus was afraid of. The highway stretched out, endless and empty. For 20 minutes, they saw almost no other cars. Callie's hope was starting to crack. Maybe no one would see. Maybe this was how it ended. Then Marcus spotted the motorcycles. They were pulled off on the shoulder, 4 bikes and 4 men in leather taking a break from the road. Bikers. The kind of men Callie's mother had always told her to stay away from. They were her only chance. Callie pressed herself against the rear window, the sign held up in trembling hands. Her whole body was shaking. "Please," she thought, "please see me. Please be brave enough to help." For a moment, nothing happened. The van was passing the bikers, and Callie thought they hadn't noticed, and her heart was breaking. Then one of them looked up. Grant Maddox had been checking his phone debating whether to grab some water from his saddlebag when some instinct made him glance at the passing van. Maybe it was the way it slowed slightly. Maybe it was the flash of movement in the rear window. Maybe it was 15 years of grief waiting for a chance at redemption. He saw her. 8 years old, dark hair, eyes wide with terror, and in her hands held up against the glass like a desperate prayer, a piece of paper with words written in a child's shaky handwriting. Kidnapped. Help. Callie Brennan. Time stopped. The world narrowed to that face, those eyes, that sign. Grant saw Lily, saw the daughter he'd failed, saw every child he hadn't saved, every case that had gone cold, every parent who'd lost everything because he hadn't been good enough, fast enough, brave enough. Not again. The thought exploded through him like a gunshot. Not again. Not this time. Not ever again. He was moving before the thought finished forming, his hand shooting out to point at the van, his other hand already on his bike's ignition. Silas, Rowan, and Briar looked where he was pointing, saw the face in the window, saw the sign. No words were exchanged. None were needed. 4 engines roared to life in perfect synchronization, a sound like fury given voice. Grant twisted the throttle, felt his bike leap forward, felt 15 years of guilt and rage and desperate hope pour into his hands. The van was already pulling away, but Grant didn't care. He'd spent 15 years being too late. He wasn't going to be late again. Behind him, his brothers followed. Silas on his right, Rowan on his left, Briar bringing up the rear. They moved like a pack, like a hunting party, like men who'd found something worth fighting for. In the van, Callie felt hope explode in her chest. They'd seen her. They were coming. Marcus saw the motorcycles in his mirror and cursed. His foot slammed on the accelerator. The van lurched forward, the old engine complaining but responding. "Not good, not good, not good," Marcus muttered. His hands white-knuckled on the wheel. He grabbed his phone, tried to dial Cross, fumbled it. The phone fell to the floor. The motorcycles were gaining. Of course they were gaining. The van was old and heavy and never meant for speed. The bikes were built for exactly this, for the chase, for the hunt. Grant pulled closer, close enough to see the van's license plate, close enough to see the scratches along the right side panel, close enough to see something that made his blood run cold. The scratches were old, weathered, the same scratches he'd seen in crime scene photos 15 years ago. The exact pattern, the exact placement. It was impossible. The van had been impounded, then sold at auction, then lost in the shuffle of bureaucracy. But Grant knew these scratches, knew the exact pattern, knew the way they caught the light. Vincent Hale's van, the van that had swallowed his daughter and never given her back. And now it had another little girl inside. Grant's vision went red around the edges. Silas was shouting something, but Grant couldn't hear it over the roar of blood in his ears. He accelerated, pulling even with the driver's window. Marcus glanced over and saw a face that would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. Saw fury and promise and absolute certainty. Saw a man who was done running, done failing, done being too late. Grant pointed at Marcus, then pointed at the shoulder of the road. The message was clear. "Pull over or I'll make you pull over." Marcus's response was to jerk the wheel to the right, trying to force Grant off the road. Grant leaned into the turn, his bike dancing on the edge of control, and came back stronger. Silas pulled up on the van's right side, boxing it in. Rowan accelerated ahead, positioning himself to cut off any escape. Briar stayed behind, making sure no innocent cars got caught in the chaos. They'd done this before, not exactly this, but close enough. They'd been soldiers, cops, men who understood tactics and teamwork. And now all of that training, all of those hard-won skills were focused on a single purpose: save the girl. Marcus was panicking now, swerving wildly, trying to find an opening. But there was no opening. The bikers moved like water, flowing around every desperate maneuver. Always there, always closing in. Ahead, Rowan spotted a dirt road cutting off into the desert. He pointed, and Grant understood immediately. The highway was too dangerous, too many potential witnesses, too much chaos. They needed to get the van somewhere isolated. Grant accelerated past Marcus's window, then began to slowly drift. Right, forcing the van to follow or crash. Marcus, seeing the trap, tried to brake and turn left instead. That's when Silas made his move. The big man pulled alongside the van's left flank and simply held position, his bike so close that Marcus would clip him if he turned. Marcus had a choice: follow Grant's lead or kill a man. For all his faults, Marcus wasn't a killer. Not yet. He turned right, following the gap Grant had created. The van bounced onto the dirt road, dust exploding around them. The bikes followed without hesitation, their tires finding purchase where the van struggled. The dirt road wound through scrub brush and rocks, getting rougher with each yard. The van was slowing, forced to navigate the terrain. The bikes had no such limitation. Callie was being thrown around in the back of the van, her bound hands making it impossible to brace herself. But she could see through the rear window, could see the bikes staying close, relentless. They were going to save her. She knew it with the same certainty she knew her own name. These men, these rough strangers, were going to save her. Marcus knew it too. Knew it was over. The road ahead was getting worse, narrowing between two low rises. If he kept going, he'd eventually get stuck. If he stopped, the bikers would be on him in seconds. He was trapped, cornered, and somewhere in his panicked mind, a part of him felt relief. He'd never wanted this, never wanted to be his brother, never wanted to hurt kids. Maybe this was his chance to finally do the right thing. The van shuddered to a stop, hemmed in by rocks and terrain. Marcus sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, breathing hard. Then he saw Grant dismount from his bike in the rearview mirror, saw the man's face, saw the promise written there. Marcus opened his door and stepped out, hands slightly raised. Listen, you don't understand. He didn't get to finish. Silas was there, massive and unstoppable, spinning Marcus around and slamming him face first into the side of the van. Zip ties appeared from somewhere, Marcus's wrists secured in seconds. Grant ignored them both. He was already at the van's rear doors, his hands on the handles. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break his ribs. 15 years. 15 years he'd been too late. 15 years of nightmares and failure. Please, he thought, please let me be on time, just this once. He yanked the doors open and sunlight flooded the dark interior. Callie blinked against the sudden brightness, then focused on the man standing there. He was older, weathered, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that held more pain than any person should carry. But his hands, when he reached for her, were gentle, infinitely gentle. It's okay, Grant said, his voice rough. You're safe now. I've got you. Callie started to cry, great hiccuping sobs of relief and fear and overwhelming emotion. Grant carefully cut the zip ties binding her wrists, then helped her out of the van. Her legs nearly buckled, but Grant caught her, steadying her. Easy, he murmured. I've got you. You're safe. Callie looked up at him with enormous eyes. You came. You saw me and you came. Something cracked in Grant's chest, some ancient wall he'd built to protect himself from feeling too much. Of course we came. You were brave enough to ask for help. That deserves an answer. Rowan appeared with a water bottle and an emergency blanket from his saddlebag. Callie drank gratefully, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, even though it wasn't cold. Shock, Grant knew. She was going into shock. He knelt down to her level. Callie, that's your name, right? Callie Brennan. She nodded. Okay, Callie, I'm Grant. That's Silas, that's Rowan, and that's Briar. We're going to make sure you get home safely. But first I need to ask you some questions. Can you do that for me? Another nod. Did that man hurt you? No, he seemed sad, actually, scared. Grant glanced back at Marcus, who Silas was keeping secured against the van. Scared of what? I don't know. He was talking to someone on the phone, someone named Cross. The name hit Grant like a fist to the gut. The world tilted, reality rearranging itself into a new and terrible shape. Cross. Nathaniel Cross. It couldn't be a coincidence. The same van, the same pattern. And now Cross's name coming out of a kidnapped girl's mouth. What did he say about Cross? Grant kept his voice level, but his hands were shaking. That Cross wanted him to get a bear. My bear, Mr. Buttons. I don't know why. Grant's mind was racing, pieces clicking together. Rebecca Mills, Sarah Brennan, the connection Torres had mentioned, a USB drive Sarah had said. Evidence. Cross wasn't just connected to this. Cross was running it, had probably been running it all along. 15 years of questions suddenly had an answer, and that answer made Grant want to burn the world down. But first the girl. First making sure Callie got home safe. Rowan was already on the phone with emergency services giving their location. Breyer was recording everything with his phone, making sure they had documentation. Silas kept Marcus secure, professional, and cold. Grant stayed with Callie, talking to her quietly, keeping her calm. She was so brave, this little girl. So much braver than she should have had to be. When the sheriff's department arrived 20 minutes later, Grant stood and gave his statement with the calm precision of his old FBI training. He left out his suspicions about Cross for now, but he made sure every detail about Marcus was recorded, made sure the van was impounded as evidence, made sure Callie was checked by paramedics, found to be shaken but unharmed, and released to her mother. Sarah Brennan arrived like a hurricane, all tears and fierce maternal protection. She grabbed Callie into an embrace that looked like it might never end, thanking Grant and his men over and over. "You saved her," Sarah kept saying. "You saved my baby." Grant wanted to say it was nothing, wanted to deflect the praise like he always did. But looking at Sarah's tear-stained face, at Callie's relieved smile, he found he couldn't speak at all. He'd saved her. After 15 years of being too late, he'd been exactly on time. As the sheriff cars pulled away, taking Marcus Hale into custody, Grant stood in the desert dust and felt something shift inside him. A door opening, a possibility emerging. What if it wasn't too late? What if there was still a chance to find the truth about Lily? What if Cross had been the key all along and Grant had been too broken to see it? Silas came up beside him, watching the vehicles disappear toward town. "Boss, you okay?" Grant touched the photograph in his vest pocket, felt Lily's face against his palm. "I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think I might be." For the first time in 15 years, Grant Maddox felt something he'd forgotten how to feel. Hope. And hope he was beginning to remember could be the most dangerous thing of all. The sun was setting by the time they made it back to the clubhouse. The desert sky was doing that thing it did, turning the whole world into shades of orange and purple and gold, beautiful enough to hurt. Grant sat on the steps outside, a beer in his hand that he hadn't touched. His mind was spinning, connections forming, old cases reopening in his memory. Rowan appeared in the doorway. "Sheriff Torres wants to talk to you, says it's important." Grant took the phone and Torres' voice came through, tight with professional courtesy that couldn't quite hide her concern. "Maddox, we've got a problem with your kidnapper." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where his lawyer's already filing motions and half his story is checking out. Marcus Hale claims he was coerced, says he was threatened into taking the Brennan girl. Won't say who threatened him, but he's adamant he was forced." Grant's jaw clenched. "You believe him?" "I don't know what I believe yet. But Maddox, there's something else. We ran Marcus Hale's employment history. In 2008 and 2009, he worked for Child Protective Services in Phoenix." The bottom dropped out of Grant's stomach. "What?" "CPS. He had access to files on at-risk children kids in the system vulnerable populations, including, Torres paused, including Lily Maddox. Your daughter's case was flagged for CPS review after the initial investigation. Grant stood up, the beer falling from his hand, shattering on the concrete. His vision was tunneling. Lily's case had crossed Marcus Hale's desk, the brother of Vincent Hale, the man who had taken her. It hadn't been random. None of it had been random. Maddox, you still there? Yeah. Grant's voice sounded distant to his own ears. Torres, I need you to pull every file Marcus Hale had access to during his time at CPS. Every single one. That's a lot of files, and I'd need a warrant. Then get a warrant, please. Grant closed his eyes. I think we're looking at something bigger than one kidnapping. Torres was quiet for a moment. You think Marcus Hale was feeding information to his brother, helping him select targets? I think that's exactly what he was doing, and I think Nathaniel Cross was part of it. The name hung in the air between them. Torres knew who Cross was, knew the implications of what Grant was suggesting. That's a serious accusation, she said carefully. I know, and I can't prove it yet. But Torres, Grant opened his eyes, looked at the darkening sky. That van, the one Marcus was driving. I know that van. It's the same one that took Lily. Same scratches, same everything. I know it. Maddox, that van was sold at auction years ago. The chain of custody. I don't care about chain of custody. I know what I saw. Torres sighed. Okay, I'll look into it. But you need to let me handle this officially. If Cross is involved, we need to be smart about how we approach it. I understand. Do you? Because I know your history, Maddox. I know what Lily means to you. And I'm asking you, please let the system work this time. Grant thought about promises he couldn't keep, about systems that failed, about how many years he'd trusted the system and what it had cost him. I'll try, he said, which was the most honest answer he could give. After he hung up, Grant sat back down on the steps. The sky was dark now, stars beginning to appear. The same stars that had been out the night Lily disappeared. The same stars that had watched him fail. Silas came out, settled his bulk onto the step beside Grant. Heard your end of that conversation. We going after Cross? Not yet. We don't have enough. Since when did we need enough? We've got righteous fury and motorcycles. That's usually enough. Despite everything, Grant smiled slowly. We need to be smart about this. Cross isn't just connected. He's FBI. If we go after him wrong, he'll bury us. So what's the play? Grant thought about Callie Brennan and her USB drive full of evidence. Thought about Rebecca Mills and her mysterious death. Thought about 15 years of questions finally starting to form answers. We find the truth, he said, all of it, every piece, and then we burn it all down. Inside the clubhouse, Grant's phone started ringing. He didn't recognize the number, almost didn't answer. But something made him pick up. Maddox, a male voice shaking. Maddox, you don't know me, but I need to talk to you about your daughter. Grant's world stopped spinning. Who is this? My name is Marcus Hale. I'm calling from the county jail. They gave me one phone call, and I need to talk to you. I need to tell you the truth about what happened to Lily. Everything in Grant wanted to reach through the phone and strangle this man. This man who'd worked with his brother to steal children. This man who'd just tried to take another little girl. But beneath the rage, there was something else. A question that had burned in Grant's chest for 15 years. I'm listening, Grant said. And Marcus Hale began to talk. His voice came through the phone line, thin and brittle like ice about to crack. Grant stood in the parking lot of the Rigthorn Riders Clubhouse, the desert night pressing in around him, and listened to a dead man talking. I didn't know, Marcus said. Not at first. Vincent was my older brother. I looked up to him my whole life. When he asked me to help him with his charity work, I thought he was finally doing something good. Grant's hand tightened on the phone. Charity work. That's what he called it. He said he was helping find homes for at-risk kids, kids who'd slipped through the cracks of the system. I was working CPS, had access to all the files. He'd ask me about specific cases sometimes. Just questions, you know. How's that Johnson kid doing? Whatever happened to the Martinez girl? I thought he cared. When did you figure out the truth? Marcus's breath shuddered. The night Lily Maddox went missing. Vincent called me 3 in the morning. He was different, excited in a way that made my skin crawl. He said, "We got the Maddox girl, the FBI's kid. This one's going to make us rich." The world tilted. Grant had to brace himself against his bike to stay upright. I confronted him, Marcus continued. Went to his place, demanded to know what he meant. That's when he showed me. The warehouse, his voice broke. The children. 5 of them locked in cages like animals. Lily was there. She was crying for her father. Grant couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only see his daughter's face, 7 years old and terrified, calling for him while he'd been at the office chasing leads that went nowhere, failing her in every possible way. Why didn't you call the police? Grant's voice was barely human. I tried, I was going to, but Vincent had insurance, photos of me with some of the kids we'd taken. He'd made it look like I was involved from the start. Said if I talked, we'd both go down and the people he worked for would kill us both anyway. He said there were FBI agents on the payroll. That no one would believe me. Cross, Grant said. He never said the name, but yeah, I figured it out later. Nathaniel Cross was the one who made evidence disappear. The one who made sure Vincent never went down for the disappearances. Cross is the one who, Marcus's voice caught, who made sure Lily's case went cold. Grant's vision was red, pure red. He had to physically restrain himself from getting on his bike right now, riding to wherever Cross was and beating the man to death with his bare hands. Where is she? The question came out raw. Where did they take Lily? I don't know. Vincent never told me. He said it was safer if I didn't know. But before he died, he sent me a letter. Said he was going to be killed because he knew too much. Said there was a notebook hidden in his old storage unit in Memphis. A record of every child, every buyer, every transaction. He said if anything happened to him, I should find it and go public. Why didn't you? Because I'm a coward. Marcus's laugh was bitter. I burned the letter, tried to forget, got into drugs to help me forget, ended up in prison anyway for possession and distribution, spent 5 years trying to convince myself Vincent had lied, that there was no notebook, no evidence, no way to make things right. But you're out now, you could have come forward. I was going to, I swear to God, Maddox, I was going to, but then Cross found me. Showed up at my halfway house the week I got out. Said I owed the organization a debt. Said Vincent's failure to deliver one final package before he died had cost them millions. Said I could pay that debt by doing one simple job. Rebecca Mills' USB drive, Grant said. How did you? Doesn't matter, keep talking. Marcus took a shuddering breath. Cross said Rebecca Mills had been one of Vincent's victims. Survived, escaped, but not before she'd somehow gotten access to financial records, client list, locations. She'd been smart enough to hide the evidence, but not smart enough to stay alive. Cross arranged her car accident in 2015, but she'd already passed the USB to her sister, Sarah Brennan. Right, Cross had been watching Sarah for years, but she never did anything with the drive. Never went to the police, never talked to reporters. He thought maybe Rebecca hadn't actually given it to her, or maybe Sarah didn't know what it was. But then, Marcus paused. Then Callie took that photo in the park. I panicked. called Cross to report it. He said it was a sign that the universe was giving us an opportunity to tie up loose ends. He told me to take Callie, get the USB, and bring both to the old safe house. And then, silence. And then what, Marcus? He was going to kill her. Marcus's voice broke completely. After I delivered everything, Cross was going to kill Callie and make it look like I did it. Then kill me and close the case. Tie up all the loose ends at once. Grant closed his eyes, feeling sick. But we stopped you. Yeah, you stopped me. You saved that little girl. You did what I should have done for Lily. Marcus was openly weeping now. I'm sorry, Maddox. I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know I'm going to hell, but I need you to know I never wanted this. I never wanted any of this. The notebook, Grant said, his voice like iron. The one in Vincent's storage unit. How do I find it? I don't know the unit number, but it's at AAA Storage on Lamar Avenue in Memphis. Units registered under a fake name, David Chen. Vincent used that alias for everything. If the unit's still there, if they haven't auctioned it off, Marcus trailed off. It's the only real evidence that exists. The only way to prove what Cross has done. What they've all done. Grant's mind was already racing ahead, planning. Memphis, the storage unit, a notebook full of names and locations and evidence. And somewhere in that notebook, maybe information about what happened to Lily. One more thing, Marcus said. Cross doesn't know I called you. He thinks I'm just sitting here waiting for my lawyer, but he's gonna figure it out soon. When he does, he's going to run, or he's going to come after everyone connected to this case, including Sarah and Callie Brennan. I'll protect them. You better, because if Cross thinks they're a threat. Marcus didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Why are you telling me this? Grant asked. What do you get out of it? Nothing. Not a damn thing. But maybe if I help you find Lily, help you stop Cross, maybe I can die, knowing I did one decent thing in my worthless life. The line went dead. Grant stood there in the darkness, the phone still pressed to his ear. Everything he thought he knew about Lily's disappearance, rearranging itself into a new and terrible picture. She hadn't been taken by a random predator. She'd been selected, targeted, stolen by a network that included people he'd trusted, people who were supposed to protect children, and she might still be alive. That thought was almost too big to hold. 15 years of grief, of mourning, of accepting her death, all of it potentially based on a lie. His daughter might be alive. Grant's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the asphalt, his back against his bike, and for the first time in over a decade, Grant Maddox wept. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief, but raw, gasping sobs that came from a place so deep he'd forgotten it existed. Silas found him there 20 minutes later, still crying, and sat down beside him without a word. When Grant could finally speak, he told Silas everything, every word Marcus had said, every terrible implication. Silas listened with his marine still calm, processing it all. When Grant finished, Silas said, "We're going to Memphis. Cross will be watching. He'll know the moment we move. Then we move fast and smart. Rowan can hack his way into the storage facility's records, find the exact unit. We go tonight, get the notebook, and get out before Cross even knows we're there. It's not that simple. If we take the evidence, Cross will know. He'll destroy everything else, disappear, and we'll never find him. So we copy it, photograph every page, leave the original, and get out. Then we take what we found to someone above Cross's pay grade. FBI headquarters, Justice Department, hell, the media if we have to." Grant wanted to say yes, wanted to burn rubber to Memphis and rip the truth out of that storage unit. But Marcus's warning echoed in his mind. Cross was going to run, or he was going to eliminate threats. And Callie and Sarah Brennan were at the top of that list. "We need to split up," Grant said. "I'll go to Memphis. You stay here, keep eyes on Sarah and Callie. If Cross makes a move, you stop him. Like hell, I'm not letting you go into Cross's territory alone. Silas, boss, we've followed you into some dumb shit over the years. This doesn't even crack the top 5. If you're going to Memphis, we're all going to Memphis. Then who protects the Brennans? The question hung in the air. Before either man could answer, Rowan appeared in the doorway, his laptop open, his face lit by the blue glow of the screen. Found something, Rowan said. Spent the last hour digging through Marcus Hale's phone records, emails, everything I could access. Cross has been calling him from a burner phone, but he slipped up once, made a call from his regular cell. Gave me enough to trace his location. Where is he? Scottsdale. Checked into a hotel under a fake name 2 hours ago. But here's the interesting part. He's not alone. Pulled hotel security footage. Rowan turned the laptop around and showed them a grainy image of Cross entering the hotel with 2 other men. Recognize them. Grant squinted at the faces. One was vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place him. The other he'd never seen before. The guy on the left is Briar Leon's emergency contact, Rowan said quietly. His brother's hospice care coordinator. The words landed like a bomb. Grant's head snapped to Rowan. What are you saying? I'm saying when I ran background on everyone in the club last year, just standard security stuff, Briar's brother was terminal. Stage 4 lymphoma. Medical bills over 200 grand. No way Briar could afford it on what he makes. But suddenly his brother's in the best hospice care in Phoenix, Silas said, pieces clicking together. Private room experimental treatments, the works. Paid in full 3 months ago, Rowan confirmed. Same time Marcus Hale got out of prison. Same time Cross started making moves. Grant felt the world tilt again. Briar. Young, eager Briar who'd joined the club 2 years ago. Briar who'd been at every ride, every meeting, every moment. Briar who'd been at the chase today. Who'd seen exactly where they'd found Callie. Who knew Marcus was in custody. Who could report everything back to Cross. Where is he? Grant's voice was dangerous. Left about an hour ago, said he had to check on his brother. Grant was on his feet, moving toward his bike. Call Torres. Tell her to put a protection detail on Sarah and Callie Brennan. Tell her Cross is in play and we have a compromised asset. What are you going to do? Silas asked, though he already knew. I'm going to have a conversation with Briar Leon. And depending on what he tells me, I'm either going to forgive him or bury him in the desert. Rowan hesitated. Boss, if you're right about this, if Briar's been feeding information to Cross, going after him alone is suicide. Cross will know you're coming. Good, Grant said. Let him know. Let him understand that I'm not running anymore. I'm not backing down. And I'm not going to be too late again. He was on his bike engine, roaring before anyone could argue further. The Phoenix streets were quiet at this hour, most people safe in their homes, unaware that in the darkness, old sins were coming due. Grant rode with single-minded purpose. Every traffic light a delay he couldn't afford, every mile a second closer to the truth. Briar's apartment was in a rundown complex on the east side of town. Grant parked his bike under a flickering streetlight and took the stairs 2 at a time. The door to apartment 3B was unlocked. That alone told Grant everything he needed to know. He pushed it open slowly, hand near the weapon he kept in his vest. The apartment was small, sparsely furnished. No sign of a struggle, no sign of Briar. But on the kitchen table, weighted down by an empty beer bottle, was an envelope with Grant's name on it. Grant opened it with steady hands, though his heart was hammering. Boss, by the time you read this, you'll know what I did. I'm sorry. That probably doesn't mean anything, but I need to say it anyway. My brother's was dying. They gave him 3 months max. No money for treatment, no options, no hope. Then Cross showed up, said he could make it all go away. Top-tier care, experimental drugs, a chance. All I had to do was join your club and keep him informed. I told myself it was harmless, just information. You guys weren't doing anything illegal, so what did it matter if Cross knew where you rode or what you talked about? It was a victimless crime. But then today happened. When I saw that little girl, when I realized what we were stopping, I understood what Cross really was, what I'd been helping him do. I called him, told him I was done, told him I was going to tell you everything. He laughed, said my brother's treatment would stop immediately, said I'd die knowing I killed him by choosing wrong. I chose wrong anyway. Called the hospital, told them to keep treating Jake no matter what. Used the last of my savings to cover a month of care. It won't be enough, but maybe it'll give him a little more time. Cross is coming for your witnesses, boss. Sarah and Callie Brennan. He's going to their house tonight soon, as he's sure you're out of the picture. He knows about Memphis, knows about the storage unit. He's got people headed there now to clean it out. You can't be in two places at once. So I made the choice for you. I'm at Cross's hotel, room 447. I'm going to make him talk, make him tell me where the evidence is, where the kids are, where Lily is. If I can get it, I'll send it to you. If I can't, well, at least I tried to do one decent thing. Tell Jake I'm sorry I couldn't be there at the end. Tell him his big brother loved him. Briar. Grant read the letter 3 times, each word cutting deeper. Briar had been a traitor. Briar had betrayed them, fed information to a monster, enabled God knows how many crimes. But Briar was also trying to make it right, in the stupidest, most suicidal way possible. Grant's phone rang. Sheriff Torres. Maddox, we've got a problem. Sarah Brennan's neighbor called 911. Said she heard glass breaking, saw a man climbing through the Brennan's window. By the time deputies arrived, the house was empty. No Sarah, no Callie, signs of struggle. No, 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 not again. Cross took them, Grant said. We don't know that for sure. It's Cross. He's tying up loose ends. Torres, you need to issue an APB on Nathaniel Cross. Federal agent, armed and dangerous. He's got hostages. Maddox, I can't just accuse a deputy director of the FBI of kidnapping without evidence. Then I'll get you evidence. I'm going to the hotel where he's staying. I'm going to make him tell me where they are. That's a terrible idea. If you assault a federal agent, I don't care. Grant's voice was flat, final. I failed my daughter 15 years ago because I followed the rules and trusted the system. I'm not making that mistake again. You can arrest me after I find Sarah and Callie, but right now I'm going to do what should have been done a long time ago. He hung up before Torres could argue further. The hotel was downtown, glass and chrome and expensive. The kind of place where FBI deputy directors stayed when they wanted to pretend they were still important. Grant walked through the lobby like he owned it, leather vest and road dust and all. The desk clerk started to object, but something in Grant's face made him think better of it. 4th floor, room 447. The door was ajar. Grant drew his weapon, a Glock he'd carried since his FBI days. He nudged the door open with his boot, scanning the room. It was a massacre. Brerlichin lay in the center of the room, his body broken in ways that spoke of professional violence. Blood pooled around him, soaking into the expensive carpet. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. Grant crossed to him, checking for a pulse he knew wouldn't be there. Briar was gone. Had been gone for at least an hour. But clutched in his hand was a phone. Grant carefully pried it free, thumbprint, unlocking the screen. One text message, unsent, typed but never delivered. Memphis was a decoy. Real evidence at Cross's lake house. Tahoe. Address attached. Lily file marked red, go. Below the message was a GPS coordinate and a photo of a notebook page clearly taken in secret. Grant zoomed in on the photo. Lily Maddox, age 7. Acquired May 14, 2009. Buyer EC Category A, high value. Transport facility 7. Memphis 10, current status as of 2015. Facility 19. Northern CA note. Do not harm. EC's special request. Long-term placement. Grant's hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone. Lily, alive. Or at least she had been in 2015. Facility 19, Northern California. Not dead, not buried, not gone forever. Alive. The word exploded through him like a star going nova. His little girl was alive. Grant forwarded the message to himself, then to Torres, then to Rowan. He stood up, stepped over Breyer's body, and walked out of the room with one singular purpose. He was going to Lake Tahoe. He was going to find that lake house. He was going to get every piece of evidence Cross had hidden. And then he was going to find Facility 19. He was going to find Lily. But first he had to save Callie and Sarah. Because this time Grant Maddox wasn't going to choose wrong. This time he was going to save everyone. Or die trying. The ride back to the clubhouse took 15 minutes. Grant made it in 8, pushing his bike to limits that would have terrified him if he'd cared about anything other than speed. Silas and Rowan were waiting, engines running, ready to move. Breyer's dead, Grant said without preamble. Cross killed him, but not before Breyer got us the evidence location. Lake Tahoe. But Cross has Sarah and Callie. We need to find them first. Rowan was already typing on his laptop. On it. Cross isn't stupid enough to use his own properties, but he's arrogant enough to use something connected to his network. Give me 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Grant Pace checked his weapons plan tactics in his head. Silas stood silent and ready, a mountain waiting to move. Finally, Rowan looked up. Got him. Old hunting cabin about 40 miles north of here. Registered to a shell company that Cross used to use for bureau safe houses. Off books, unofficial, perfect place to hide hostages. How sure are you? 90%. Cross's phone pinged a tower near there 2 hours ago. Plus, I hacked into his email and he found a message to an associate about cleaning the cabin and preparing for guests. Good enough, let's move. They rode out into the night, 3 bikes moving in formation through empty roads. The desert darkness was absolute, broken only by their headlights and the cold stars above. Grant's mind kept circling back to the notebook entry. Lily, Facility 19, Northern California, alive. He'd spent 15 years believing she was dead. 15 years of grief and guilt and self-destruction, all built on a lie. Cross had known. Had known the whole time that Lily was alive and let Grant suffer. For that alone, Grant would make him pay. But first, the living. First, the innocents who still had a chance. The cabin appeared in their headlights like a ghost, isolated and dark except for a single light in one window. 2 vehicles parked outside, a black SUV and a sedan. Both empty. Grant signaled for Silas and Rowan to circle around back. He'd take the front. Classic pincer movement. He approached the cabin with his weapon drawn, every sense heightened. Through the window he could see movement, shadows, voices too muffled to make out words. Then he heard it, a child crying. Callie. Grant's control, already stretched to the breaking point, snapped. He kicked the front door open, weapon up, moving with the muscle memory of 1,000 FBI raids. Federal agent, hands up. The scene inside froze like a photograph. Sarah Brennan tied to a chair, her face bruised. Callie huddled in the corner, a stuffed bear clutched to her chest. And standing in the center of the room, looking only mildly surprised, was Nathaniel Cross. Grant? Cross's smile was thin. Right on time, you always did have a talent for showing up at the worst possible moment. 2 men appeared from side rooms, weapons drawn. Grant recognized one of them from the hotel security footage. Put the gun down, Grant, you're outnumbered. I don't think I am. On cue, the back door crashed open. Silas came through like a freight train, immediately tackling one of Cross's men. Rowan followed his own weapon trained on the second man. The room erupted into chaos. Grant kept his focus on Cross, his gun never wavering. "It's over, Nathaniel. I know everything. Vincent's notebook, Rebecca Mills, the network, all of it." Cross's smile didn't falter. "You know nothing. You have nothing. Briar Leon dead and discredited. Marcus Hale, convicted felon, whose testimony means nothing. Any evidence you think you have, it'll disappear before you can blink. The notebook in Lake Tahoe won't disappear. Neither will the files in Facility 19. That got a reaction." Cross's eyes narrowed. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter. What matters is I know Lily's alive. I know where she is. And I know you've been covering it up for 15 years. Lily's alive." Sarah Brennan's voice cut through the tension. "The little girl who went missing years ago, she's alive." Grant didn't take his eyes off Cross. Tell them what EC means. Who bought my daughter?" Cross laughed, actually laughed. "You think you've solved the mystery, Grant? You haven't even scratched the surface. EC isn't a person. It's a partnership. Powerful people who make sure operations like this stay protected. People at levels you can't even imagine. I don't care how powerful they are. I'm going to burn it all down, starting with you. You're going to kill a federal agent in front of witnesses, think Grant. Even if you're right about everything, you shoot me and you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. You'll never find Lily." The gun in Grant's hand trembled. Cross was right. Killing him solved nothing. But letting him live, letting him walk away. "So here's what's going to happen," Cross continued, voice smooth. "I'm going to walk out of here. You're going to let me because you need me alive to tell you where Facility 19 is. And then we're going to negotiate like civilized people. I don't negotiate with child traffickers." "Then Lily stays lost forever. Your choice." Grant's finger tightened on the trigger. 15 years of rage, of grief, of failure, all converging on this moment. He could end it right now. Could make Cross pay. But Callie was watching. Sarah was watching. And somewhere in Northern California, Lily was waiting. Grant lowered his weapon. "Silas, secure him." Cross's smile widened. Smart choice. But as Silas approached with zip ties, Cross moved. Fast-trained FBI tactical fast. He grabbed a lamp from the table, swung it at Silas's head. Silas dodged, but it gave Cross the second he needed to draw his own weapon. The shot rang out, deafening in the small cabin. Silas went down with a grunt, blood blooming on his shoulder. Rowan returned fire, missing, as Cross dove behind the overturned table. "Go!" Grant shouted to Rowan. "Get them out!" Rowan grabbed Callie, Sarah, still tied to the chair, but mobile, and dragged them both toward the back door. Cross fired again, the bullet splintering wood inches from Callie's head. Grant put himself between Cross and the fleeing hostages, returning fire, forcing Cross to keep his head down. By the time Cross popped back up, Rowan had gotten Sarah and Callie outside. Silas was on his feet despite the shoulder wound, moving to flank Cross. Cross saw the tactical situation deteriorating, made a decision. He broke for the front door, firing blind to cover his retreat. Grant chased, but Cross was already at the SUV, engine roaring to life. The vehicle spun out, throwing gravel, and disappeared into the darkness. Grant stood in the doorway, weapon still raised, breathing hard. Cross was gone. The hostages were safe. Briar was dead. And somewhere at Lake Tahoe, a notebook held the keys to everything. "Boss," Silas's voice was tight with pain. "I'm good. Flesh wound. We need to move." Grant turned back to the cabin. Sarah was crying, holding Callie. The little girl still clutched her stuffed bear. The bear, with the USB drive inside. "Sarah," Grant said gently, "the evidence Rebecca gave you, is it in that bear?" Callie answered instead. "Mr. Buttons has a secret pocket. Aunt Rebecca sewed it in before she died." Mommy told me never to look inside, that it was very important. Grant knelt down to Callie's level. Sweetheart, that pocket might help us save a lot of people. Can we look inside? Callie looked at her mother. Sarah, bruised and exhausted, nodded. With careful fingers, Callie showed them the hidden seam in the bear's back. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small USB drive. Grant took it like it was made of glass. Rowan, can you... Already on it. Rowan had his laptop out, plugging in the drive. Files appeared. Hundreds of them. Financial records. Names. Photos. Locations. A complete map of a trafficking network that had operated for over 2 decades. And in a folder labeled EC Partnership was a list of names. Politicians, judges, corporate executives, and yes, FBI agents, including Nathaniel Cross. But ICE itself, the buyer who'd specifically requested Lily that name, was still hidden, encrypted beyond even Rowan's immediate ability to crack. This is enough, Grant said. Enough to bring down Cross, to expose the network to... His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Cross's voice came through, breathless from running. Clever, Grant. Very clever. But you're still too late. I've already made calls. Evidence at Lake Tahoe is being destroyed as we speak. And Facility 19, Cross laughed, doesn't exist anymore. They moved operations 6 months ago. Lily's gone. Vanished into a new location you'll never find. I will find her. No, you won't, because you're going to make a choice. You can spend the next 5 years prosecuting me, fighting through lawyers and appeals and bureaucracy. Maybe you'll win, probably you won't, or... Cross paused. You can let me go, let me disappear, and in exchange I'll tell you exactly where Lily is. Right now, one-time offer. Grant's mind raced. It was a trap. Had to be a trap. But if there was even a chance, how do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. That's the beauty of it. You have to trust me. The same way you trusted me 15 years ago when I was your partner, when I was helping you look for Lily. Cross's voice turned cold. When I was the one who made sure you never found her. The admission hit Grant like a physical blow. Tick-tock, Grant. Decide. Justice or your daughter. The greater good or the one life that matters most. What's it going to be? Grant looked at Sarah and Callie, at the USB drive, full of evidence, at Silas bleeding from a shoulder wound, at the choice that had no right answer. He'd failed this test once before, chosen the case over his daughter, chosen duty over love, and it had cost him everything. Grant started, but before he could finish, Rowan looked up from his laptop, his face pale. Boss, I cracked the EC encryption. Grant's heart stopped, and Rowan turned the laptop around. The screen showed a name, a photograph, a detailed file on someone Grant had known for 30 years. The world tilted on its axis one more time. No, Grant whispered. No, that's not possible. But the evidence didn't lie. EC, the buyer who'd specifically requested Lily, who'd kept her alive for 15 years, who'd built an empire of horror, had been hiding in plain sight all along. Eleanor Catherine Maddox, his mother. And now Grant had to decide, expose the truth and lose Lily forever, or make a deal with the devil to get his daughter back. The phone was still in his hand. Cross was still waiting for an answer. The night pressed in heavy with impossible choices. And somewhere in the darkness, Lily waited, 15 years old and lost, not knowing her father was finally coming for her. The name on Rowan's laptop screen burned itself into Grant's brain, rearranging 15 years of memories into a new and terrible pattern. Eleanor Catherine Maddox, his mother. Grant's hand went numb, the phone slipping from his fingers. Silas caught it before it hit the ground. Cross's voice still emanating from the speaker, demanding an answer. That can't be right, Grant said, his voice hollow. Run it again, there's a mistake. Rowan's face was gray. Boss, I've checked 3 times. The encryption key, the payment records, the correspondence. It all points to the same person. Eleanor Catherine Maddox, E.C. Grant's mother had died 8 years ago. Cancer, they'd said. A peaceful death surrounded by family. He'd held her hand as she slipped away, forgiven her for being distant, for never quite showing the warmth other mothers did. He'd never suspected, never imagined. The files go back 30 years, Rowan continued quietly. She was one of the original founders of the network, used her wealth from your father's estate to fund operations. And Lily, he swallowed hard. Lily wasn't random, boss. Your mother specifically requested her, her own granddaughter. The cabin floor seemed to tilt beneath Grant's feet. Silas grabbed his arm, steadying him. Why, son? The word came out broken, and why would she? There's correspondence here, Rowan said, pulling up files. Letters between your mother and Vincent Hale. She wrote that she wanted to preserve the Maddox bloodline properly, that Diane was an unsuitable influence, and you were too weak to raise a child correctly. She planned to keep Lily somewhere controlled, raise her according to proper standards. Grant's stomach turned. His mother had been a cold woman, critical and exacting. She'd never approved of Diane, had barely hidden her disdain for Grant's career choice. But this was beyond anything he could have comprehended. His own mother had orchestrated Lily's kidnapping, had kept her alive somewhere hidden for 15 years, had watched Grant destroy himself with grief and guilt and said nothing. Cross's voice crackled from the phone in Silas's hand. I'm guessing you found the EC files. Surprised, Grant? You shouldn't be. Eleanor was brilliant. She built an empire while baking cookies for the church fundraiser. She played the society matron while running one of the most sophisticated trafficking networks in North America. Silas held the phone up. Grant took it with shaking hands. My mother is dead, Grant said. Is she, though? Or is that just what she wanted you to believe? Eleanor Maddox was a planner, Grant. She knew the walls were closing in. Rebecca Mills was getting too close, asking too many questions. So Eleanor staged her death, cashed out her assets, and disappeared. The cancer story was a beautiful cover. You're lying. Am I then explain the financial transfers from Eleanor's estate that continued for 3 years after her supposed death? Explain the property purchases in Northern California under shell companies she controlled. Explain why Facility 19, the place where Lily has been kept all these years, is registered to a trust in Eleanor's name. Grant felt like he was drowning. Where is it? Where is Facility 19? That's what I've been trying to tell you. Give me immunity, let me disappear, and I'll give you the address. But you have to decide now, Grant. Because in about 20 minutes, Eleanor's people are going to move Lily again. She's been monitoring this situation. She knows you're close, and she's not going to let you find her prize. Grant looked at Sarah and Callie at the USB drive, full of evidence that could bring down dozens of criminals. At Silas, bleeding from defending innocence. At the choice that would define everything, justice or family, the law or love. 15 years ago, he'd chosen duty and lost everything. Tell me where she is, Grant said quietly. Tell me where Lily is, and I'll let you walk. Boss, Silas started, but Grant held up a hand. Tell me. Cross's satisfaction was audible. Smart man. Facility 19 is in Shasta County. Small compound disguised as a private boarding school. 23 Redwood Lane, just outside the town of Bernie. But Grant, you need to hurry. Eleanor's evacuation protocol is probably already in motion. How do I know you're not sending me into a trap? You don't. But what choice do you have? Cross paused. One more thing. Your mother isn't alone. She has a security team. Former military, very loyal, very well armed. You go in guns blazing, Lily dies in the crossfire. You need to be smart about this. The line went dead. Grant stood there, the phone in his hand, everything he thought he knew about his life crumbling like sand. "We're going after her," Silas said. It wasn't a question. "Cross gets away with it everything. The network stays operational. All these victims." Grant gestured at the USB drive. "They don't get justice." "Justice can wait," Silas said firmly. "Your daughter can't." Rowan was already packing up his laptop. "Bernie, California is about 11 hours from here by car. But if we push it, if we ride straight through, we can make it in 9, maybe 8. "You're both hurt." "Flesh wound," Silas said, echoing his earlier words. "I've ridden with worse." Grant looked at Sarah Brennan. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. If I let Cross go, if I choose my daughter over bringing him to justice, can you live with that?" Sarah, still holding Callie close, met his eyes. Her face was bruised, her lips split, but her gaze was steady. "Mr. Maddox, I spent 10 years hiding evidence because I was too afraid to use it, too afraid of what might happen to Callie if I spoke up. I understand fear. I understand impossible choices." She touched her daughter's hair gently. "Go get your little girl. We'll figure out the rest later." Callie pulled something from her pocket, the Polaroid photo she'd taken in the park, the one that had started this whole cascade. "This is evidence, too, of the bad man doing bad things. When you get back with Lily, we can show everyone what happened." Grant knelt down, taking the photo carefully. "You're very brave, Callie." "So are you," she said simply. "Go save your daughter." 10 minutes later, 3 motorcycles roared north through the Arizona desert. Behind them, Sheriff Torres was arriving at the cabin with backup ready to take Sarah and Callie into protective custody. Ahead of them, 800 miles of highway in a race against time. Grant pushed his bike to its limits, the white lines on the highway blurring together. Beside him, Silas and Rowan kept pace, 3 men riding into the unknown with nothing but determination and desperate hope. As dawn broke over the desert, Rowan pulled up alongside Grant at a gas station. While they refueled, Rowan showed Grant what else he'd found on the USB drive. "There are photos," Rowan said quietly, "of Lily, updated annually. Your mother documented everything." Grant's hands trembled as he scrolled through the images. Lily at 8, 9, 10, growing up in a series of sterile rooms, her eyes getting older harder. The last photo was dated 6 months ago. Lily at 22, looking so much like Diane it hurt to breathe. But she was alive. After 15 years of believing she was dead, of mourning a ghost, she was alive. "There's something else," Rowan said. "Notes in your mother's files. She didn't just keep Lily imprisoned. She tried to remake her. Private tutors, cultural education, etiquette training. She was trying to create the perfect Maddox heir, the granddaughter she always wanted." Grant felt sick. "Did it work?" "I don't know, but boss, we need to prepare for the possibility that Lily might not remember you, or might not want to be rescued. 15 years of that kind of manipulation. I don't care if she remembers me. I don't care if she hates me. I'm bringing her home." They rode on, through California's Central Valley up into the mountains, the landscape changing from desert to forest. Grant's mind churned through tactics, through approaches, through every possible scenario. His mother, if she was really alive, would be expecting him. Cross would have warned her. The compound would be fortified, prepared. But Grant had spent 15 years imagining this moment. 15 years of tactical planning in the dead of night, running scenarios of how he'd storm whatever facility held his daughter. He'd never thought he'd actually get the chance. But now that it was here, he was ready. They reached Bernie by late afternoon, the small mountain town quiet and unsuspecting. Rowan used his laptop to pull up satellite imagery of 23 Redwood Lane. The compound was exactly as Cross had described. A large main building styled like a New England boarding school surrounded by a high fence. Security cameras visible at every corner. 2 guard posts at the entrance. And in the back, a smaller building that Rowan's thermal imaging showed contained multiple heat signatures. 12 people in the main building, Rowan said. 4 in the guard posts and 3 in the small building. One of those 3 is Lily, Grant said with certainty. How do you know? Because that's where I'd put a high-value prisoner. Separate from the others, easier to control, harder to rescue. Silas leaned in, studying the imagery. We can't go through the front, too exposed, but there's a service road here on the east side. Looks like it leads to the back fence. Security will see us coming, Rowan said. Not if we cut the power first. Silas pointed to a transformer station about half a mile from the compound. Take that out, whole place goes dark. They'll have backup generators, but it'll give us a window. Grant shook his head. Too risky. If we go in aggressive, they might kill the prisoners rather than let them be rescued. We need a softer approach. You want to knock on the front door? Silas said incredulously. Not knock, walk in. We know Cross warned them. They're expecting an assault. What they're not expecting is a negotiation. Rowan caught on first. You're going to trade yourself for Lily. Not trade, offer. I go in unarmed, asked to see my mother. While they're focused on me, you two get in position for extraction. That's suicide, boss. It's the only play that doesn't get Lily killed. Grant's voice was steel. I've been too late, too slow, too careful for 15 years. Not this time. This time I walk through the front door and I don't leave without my daughter. They argued for another 10 minutes, but Grant was immovable. Finally, Silas and Rowan agreed to the plan, though neither liked it. As the sun set over the compound, Grant Maddox walked up to the front gate, hands clearly visible and empty, and spoke into the intercom. My name is Grant Maddox. I'm here to see my mother. For a long moment, silence. Then a woman's voice, cool and cultured and achingly familiar, came through the speaker. Hello, Grant. I've been expecting you. The gates opened. Grant walked through, feeling every camera track his movement. The guards at the post kept weapons trained on him but didn't fire. He was led into the main building through hallways that looked like any expensive private school until he reached a set of double doors. They opened to reveal a sitting room decorated in the style his mother had always preferred, antique furniture, paintings, Persian rugs. And sitting in a high-backed chair, looking exactly as he remembered her, was Eleanor Catherine Maddox. You look terrible, were her first words. Have you been taking care of yourself? Grant stared at the woman who'd raised him, who taught him to ride a bike and corrected his table manners and attended his graduation from the FBI Academy, who'd also apparently built a trafficking empire and stolen his daughter. You're supposed to be dead, he said. I am dead. Eleanor Maddox died peacefully in her sleep 8 years ago. The woman sitting before you is simply someone who looks like her. His mother smiled thinly. But we both know the truth, don't we? Where's Lily? Safe, healthy, better off than she would have been with you and that woman you married. The casual dismissal of Diane of his marriage, of everything he'd lost, ignited something in Grant. But he kept his voice level. I want to see her. I'm sure you do, but first we need to discuss terms. There are no terms. You give me Lily or I bring this whole operation down. Eleanor laughed, actually laughed. With what Cross has already fled the country. The evidence you think you have is circumstantial at best. And even if you could prove I was involved, I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, politicians, judges in my pocket. You'd spend the rest of your life fighting me and never win. I don't care. I'll fight anyway. I know you will. That's what makes you so tediously predictable. Eleanor stood, walked to a side table, poured herself a drink. You're just like your father, so rigid, so convinced of your own righteousness. It's exhausting. My father was a good man. Your father was a fool who died in debt, leaving me to rebuild the family fortune from nothing. Do you know what it's like, Grant, to be a woman of ambition in a world run by mediocre men? I had to claw and scrape and make compromises you couldn't possibly understand. Compromises like trafficking children. I prefer to think of it as resource allocation. There are children who would waste away in poverty in abusive homes and foster care. I gave them purpose, gave them to people who wanted them, who could afford to take care of them. You sold them like cattle. I gave them value in a world that considered them worthless. Eleanor's voice hardened. And yes, I profited. I built an empire. I secured the Maddox legacy, something you would have destroyed with your naive idealism. And Lily, what was she? Just another resource. Eleanor's expression softened, which was somehow worse than her coldness. Lily was special. My granddaughter, the child who should have been raised properly, not by that weak woman and her weak son. So I took her, gave her the education, the refinement, the training that you never could. I made her into something extraordinary. You tortured her. I saved her. From a life of mediocrity, from your failure as a father, from a world that would have broken her. Here she's safe. Here she's perfected. Grant's control was fracturing. Let me see her. Now. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, then pressed a button on her desk. Bring in Lily. The wait felt eternal. Then a side door opened and she walked in. Lily Maddox at 22 was both exactly what Grant remembered and completely transformed. She had Diane's features, his mother's bearing, and eyes that held depths of pain Grant couldn't fathom. She looked at him without recognition. Grandmother said you wanted to see me. Grant's throat closed. She didn't remember. 15 years and she didn't remember him at all. Lily, he managed. It's me. It's your father. She tilted her head, studied him like he was a curiosity. I don't have a father, Grandmother explained. He abandoned me when I was young, left me to be taken by bad people. She saved me. The lies layered over 15 years had done their work. Grant felt something inside him shatter. That's not true. I searched for you. Every day for 15 years I searched. Did you? Lily's voice was cool, detached. Then why didn't you find me? It was the question Grant had asked himself 10,000 times. The question that had destroyed him. And now his daughter was asking it, and he had no answer that could possibly be enough. I tried, he whispered. I tried so hard. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. Lily turned to Eleanor. Is this why you brought me here, to meet the man who failed to protect me? Eleanor smiled. I thought you deserved closure, darling. To see that your father is exactly as I described. Weak, ineffectual. A man who talks about love, but doesn't have the strength to back it up. Grant looked at his daughter, at the stranger wearing his daughter's face, and felt the last 15 years crash down on him. He'd been too late. Not just by hours or days, but by years. Too late to save her from this. But not too late to try. Lily, he said quietly, your mother used to sing to you. You are my sunshine. Every night before bed. And you'd always mess up the words in the second verse, sing you may never know, dear, instead of you'll never know, dear. It made her laugh every time. Lily's expression flickered, just for a second. And you had a stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops. You took him everywhere. When you were 5, you left him at a restaurant, and we drove back 2 hours to get him because you couldn't sleep without him. Another flicker. Lily's hand moved unconsciously as if holding something. Your favorite color was purple. Your favorite food was pancakes with way too much syrup. You wanted to be a veterinarian when you grew up because you thought all animals deserved someone to take care of them. Stop, Lily's voice cracked. You were 7 years old when you were taken. It was May 14th, 2009. You'd had a piano recital that night. Für Elise. I promised I'd be there. Stop it. I wasn't there. I was working a case. I thought I had time. I thought I could save everyone, and I failed you. I said stop. Lily's composure was crumbling, tears forming. I have looked for you every single day since. Every morning I woke up thinking about you. Every night I went to sleep wondering if you were alive, if you were safe, if you remembered me. And I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry it took me 15 years, but I'm here now and I'm not leaving without you. Lily was crying openly now, her careful mask destroyed. I do remember. I remember all of it. The song, the rabbit, the pancakes. I remember you promising you'd be at the recital. I waited for you. I kept waiting. I know, sweetheart. She said you didn't want me, that you were happy I was gone, that I was better off here. She lied. Grant took a step forward. Losing you destroyed me. Your mother died from grief. I quit the FBI. I've been a ghost for 15 years. You were everything, Lily. You are everything. Eleanor's voice cut through. Enough. This is pointless sentimentality. Lily, darling, you know the truth. Your father is weak. He'll make promises he can't keep, offer you a life he can't provide. But Lily wasn't looking at Eleanor. She was looking at Grant, really looking at him, and something was breaking through the years of conditioning. You really came for me, she said, wonder in her voice. After all this time, you actually came. I will always come for you. Eleanor moved toward a desk drawer. This has gone far enough. Security. She didn't finish. The room's lights cut out, plunging everything into darkness. Silas and Rowan had made their move. In the chaos, Grant lunged forward, grabbed Lily's hand. Trust me, please. For one heartbeat, he thought she'd pull away. Thought 15 years of lies had won. Then Lily squeezed his hand back. Okay, let's go. They ran through the darkened building, emergency lights flickering on. Behind them, Eleanor was shouting orders. Ahead, the sound of breaking glass, Rowan coming through a window. This way. Rowan led them through corridors Grant had never seen, using thermal imaging to navigate. Silas brought up the rear, keeping security at bay with suppressing fire. They burst through a back door into the forest behind the compound. The motorcycles were there, engines running. Silas had stolen a car for Lily. No way she could ride on the back of a bike for hours. Go, 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 Silas shouted. They went. Through the trees, down the mountain service road, security vehicles pursuing but falling behind. By the time they hit the main highway, they'd lost their tail. Grant looked in his rearview mirror. Lily was in the car behind him, Rowan driving, looking shell-shocked but alive. Actually alive. He'd done it. After 15 years, he'd actually done it. But the victory felt hollow. Eleanor was still out there. Cross was free. The network was still operational. They'd won the battle, but not the war. 2 hours down the road, they stopped at a rest area. Lily got out of the car, walked over to where Grant stood by his bike. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, Grant admitted. We have evidence against Eleanor, against the network. But she's right, she has resources, connections. Fighting her will take years. And you, he looked at his daughter, this stranger who was also the little girl he'd lost. You need time. Time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of what she made you. I don't know who that is anymore. That's okay, we'll figure it out together. Lily nodded slowly. Then hesitantly she hugged him. Just a brief embrace, awkward and uncertain. But it was something. When she pulled back, Grant saw Diane in her face. Saw the daughter he'd lost and the woman she'd become. There's someone else who needs help, Lily said quietly. At the compound. There are other girls there, younger than me. Some of them have been there for years. Grant's jaw tightened. How many? 12. Grandmother keeps them separate, but I've seen them. They're prisoners, just like I was. Silas, listening nearby, pulled out his phone. I'm calling Torres. We give her everything, the location, the evidence, the whole network. Let the FBI do this right. Eleanor will run, Grant said. Let her. We save the kids first. Then we hunt her down. Grant looked at the USB drive Rowan had kept safe, at the photos of Lily through the years, at his daughter standing in front of him alive. "Make the call," he said. The next 6 hours were a blur. Sheriff Torres coordinated with FBI units across state lines. The Bernie compound was raided at dawn. 12 girls ranging from 8 to 17 years old were recovered. Eleanor Maddox was not among the captured. She'd fled in the confusion, disappeared into whatever bolt hole she'd prepared. Cross, too, remained at large. But the network was fractured, exposed its leader scrambling. Grant gave his statement to federal agents, handed over the evidence, and for the first time in 15 years, felt like maybe the system might actually work. 3 days later, Grant and Lily sat in a small apartment in Phoenix that Silas had helped them find. Temporary housing while they figured out what came next. Lily was curled up on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders, looking young and old at the same time. "Do you think we'll ever find her grandmother?" "Probably not anytime soon. She's had years to prepare. But she'll make a mistake eventually. They always do." And Cross. "Him too." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I spent 15 years hating you, believing you didn't care, that you'd moved on, forgotten about me. I never forgot, not for a second. I know that now, but..." She wiped at her eyes. "I wasted so much time hating you. We can't get those years back." Grant moved to sit beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "No, we can't. But we have now. We have today and tomorrow and every day after that. We can't change the past, but we can decide what the future looks like. I don't know how to be your daughter anymore. That's okay. I don't really know how to be your father to a 22-year-old. We'll figure it out as we go." Lily leaned against his shoulder tentatively. Grant wrapped an arm around her, and they sat there in silence, two broken people trying to learn how to be family again. Outside, the Arizona sun set in shades of gold and red. Sheriff Torres called to say that Callie and Sarah Brennan had gone into witness protection, but wanted to thank Grant for everything. Silas texted to say his shoulder was healing fine. Rowan sent over updates on the investigation, dozens of arrests, hundreds of victims being identified and returned to families. Good news. Real, tangible good news. But Grant knew the war wasn't over. Eleanor was out there somewhere rebuilding. Cross was out there, others in the network who'd escaped the raid. The fight would continue, maybe for years, maybe forever. But right now, in this moment, Grant had his daughter back, and that was enough. Lily fell asleep on his shoulder as the night deepened. Grant sat there, afraid to move, afraid this was all a dream that would shatter if he breathed wrong. But she stayed solid, real, alive. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You want a battle, Grant, not the war. I'm still out there, and I always collect what's mine, you see." Grant deleted the message without responding. Let Eleanor make her threats. He'd spent 15 years running from the past, drowning in guilt, convinced he was too late for everything. Not anymore. He looked down at Lily's sleeping face and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, Eleanor's revenge, Cross's scheming, the network's retaliation, he'd be ready. Because he'd already lost her once. He wasn't going to lose her again. The fight wasn't over. But Grant Maddox had finally found something worth fighting for. 6 months later, Grant stood in a courtroom as a federal prosecutor laid out the case against 17 defendants connected to the trafficking network. Lily sat in the gallery, Sarah and Callie beside her. Silas and Rowan were there too, the Rigthorn Riders having transformed into something more like a support group for trafficking survivors than a motorcycle club. The evidence was overwhelming. The USB drive, Marcus Hale's testimony before his death, Breyer's final message and testimony from the rescued girls. The network was crumbling. But two names were notably absent from the defendant list. Eleanor Catherine Maddox, whereabouts unknown. Nathaniel Cross, whereabouts unknown. After the day's proceedings, Grant walked out of the courthouse with Lily. She'd been attending therapy 3 times a week, working through trauma, that would probably take a lifetime to fully process, but she was trying. That's all anyone could do. Do you think she's watching? Lily asked, meaning Eleanor. Probably. Does it bother you that she got away? Grant thought about it. 6 months ago, the answer would have been a furious yes, but now she didn't get away with everything. She lost you. She lost her empire. She lost the respect and fear she built over decades. She's running, hiding, looking over her shoulder. That's its own kind of prison. And Cross? Him I want to find. We have unfinished business. Lily nodded, then quietly, I've been thinking about going to college. Maybe studying psychology, so I can help people like me, people who've been through trauma. Grant's heart swelled. I think that's a wonderful idea. It's going to be hard. I'm so far behind everyone my age. I barely have a high school education. You're also one of the strongest people I've ever met. You survived 15 years of hell and came out the other side. College will be easy in comparison. Lily smiled, and it was the first real smile Grant had seen from her. Not the polite mask she'd been taught to wear, but genuine warmth. Thank you, she said, for not giving up, for spending 15 years looking for me even when everyone said I was dead. You're my daughter. I would have searched for 1,500 years if that's what it took. They walked to where Silas was waiting with the bikes. Lily had been learning to ride, taking lessons from Rowan. She wasn't ready for highway speeds yet, but she could handle short trips. You ready? Silas asked. Yeah, Lily said. Let's go home. Home. The word still felt strange new, but they were building it one day at a time. As they rode through Phoenix's streets, Grant thought about the photograph he'd carried for 15 years. It was still in his vest right over his heart. But now he had the real thing beside him, life and healing, and building a future. He thought about Marcus Hale, who'd made terrible choices but had died trying to make them right. About Briar Leon, who'd betrayed them but had given his life to provide the evidence they needed. About Rebecca Mills, who died protecting the truth. About all the victims who hadn't been as lucky as Lily, who'd been lost to the network's machinery of horror. The fight to dismantle the network would continue. Eleanor and Cross would eventually surface, they always did. And when they did, Grant would be waiting. But today, riding through the desert with his daughter and his brothers, Grant Maddox allowed himself something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've done everything you could, fought as hard as you were able, and somehow against all odds, gotten the miracle you'd stopped believing in. The sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of hope. And for the first time in 15 years, Grant Maddox rode toward tomorrow instead of away from yesterday. The nightmare was over. The healing had begun. And somewhere out there in the vast machinery of justice, the wheels were turning. Evidence was being processed. Connections were being made. The network that had operated in shadows for 30 years was being dragged into the light. It would take years. There would be setbacks. Some guilty people would escape justice. Some innocent people would be hurt in the crossfire. But the arc of justice, as someone once said, bends toward what's right. And Grant Maddox, with his daughter beside him and his brothers at his back, was going to make damn sure it bent all the way. 1 year later, a letter arrived at Grant's address. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in South America. Inside, a single sentence in his mother's precise handwriting. This isn't over, my son. Grant read it once, then handed it to Lily, who'd been staying with him while attending community college. She read it, then calmly tore it into pieces. Yes, it is. And threw the pieces in the trash. Grant smiled. His daughter, brilliant, strong, unbroken, despite everything, was right. The old fight, the old fear, the old guilt, that was over. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. And that made all the difference.